All right, if you haven't done so yet, please take a second to get your episode loaded and paused at the 0-second mark. Remember, we do not skip intros or recaps. So if everyone is ready, those of you who've been here before know what comes next. If you're new, grab your remote and have your finger on the play button, but don't press it yet because we're going to do that at the same time on the count of 3. Everyone ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
And Mary will let you know when Book's little intro is over.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Was this in the original? Like, did they do this on the original network airing of it?
I think so. I remember.
Oh, actually, no.
It's a little weird. I think it's gotten a little weird now.
I don't remember.
That they're doing it every single time.
Yeah, well, they've aired these on different days at different times out of order, so it wouldn't have been weird that.
Okay, Mary.
I don't buy it, Simon. You're too prompt. He swears.
It's
Trouble.
I hadn't thought about the fact that the use of Chinese allows them to get away with expletives that they couldn't do in English.
Exactly.
That was actually a big aim of it.
I have to admit, I think this is my favorite episode too.
Welcome to Higgins Moon. Any idea why Jayne's all bundled up?
Enemy. He told us, Shay. He has enemies. He made some enemies.
Ah, the beauty of capitalism.
Simon's a really convincing buyer.
Oh.
Pretty good likeness.
Yeah, whoever made that did a pretty good job.
Questions.
What about
Yes, they really hate him.
you
Yep.
think it's
I
a
don't
wanted-
understand the confusion.
He
What do
made
you think
so
it's
many
supposed to be
enemies. They want to make sure they can
prediction
spot him.
Yeah, I was gonna say a wanted poster, but in mud statue form, or
It's
Cool.
look, they must worship him. I don't know. People don't make statues of people they hate.
why not, Jen? I would. I want to make sure I recognize him. Like,
I just thought like maybe they had some paper, but I guess it's a clay place.
I mean, I get it. It's like these are clay people, so rather than a wanted poster, they do a wanted statue. I mean, it is historically what you use to show reverence, but
I love how everyone's just mesmerized.
the statue even looks kind of angry, doesn't it?
oh, I know this actor. I've worked with him on the stage or can't remember.
That's cool.
Many, many years ago, stage reading for something. I can't remember what it was.
His name is Gregory Itzin.
Yeah, Greg Itzin. Yeah, that's right. Sci-fi. I remember he's telling me that sci-fi was his like bread and butter.
You see what River's doing?
She's destroying books by book.
She's fixing it.
He's
It
fixing
makes no
them.
sense. Like she was giving him a choice.
Very.
What is this garbage?
Mutter's milk.
Sounds horrific. I can imagine John.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. It's not. He's not man wanted.
Oh, listen.
I totally knew it. I knew it. Jen, we were right.
I love this song.
Oh, their faces are cracking me up.
They're so
I'm watching this for like the 100th time and I'm still.
Oh, absolutely.
I've only watched it once through, and so I totally forgot about this.
It's such a catchy song. You can't help but sing along.
right.
Oh, so he like did a food drop or something, right?
He said he stole money.
Oh, and so they basically got a bunch of money.
They think he's like Robin Hood.
I'd love to go to the town where you're the hero too, Wash. Maybe they'll be juggling.
Was that written into the script?
Yes, sir.
Let's see.
Panda piss.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Now you can see why I was so excited, right?
Yeah, this is good.
being a hero is not so bad.
I look like Ryan Reynolds.
They just give you a bunch of whiskey. That's awesome. John gets to collect his favorite thing in this episode.
I was gonna say it's a collection.
Oh my God.
I'm waiting for it all to
wow.
backfire.
These are some pretty special ones. God, I think I'm gonna make some drunk mementos.
Does that mean you have to be drunk when you make them?
Yeah, that for sure. Yes. And then they will all represent drunk performances. I don't know.
I'm waiting for this to all backfire on Jayne somehow.
You do not get into a relationship under these conditions. It's bad news.
But he just finally said something about her being pretty.
Yeah, I know, but he said it while he was drunk.
His brains are in terrible danger.
Too much hair.
Shut up. My very own quiet.
I love this.
Ooh,
He's so pretty.
just your type, huh?
Exactly. Forget about Mal. I love Stitch.
Ruh-roh.
I mean, I'd still shoot the guy for keeping me in a box for 4 years. I don't know about, like, I don't get it.
And he was able to stand and not fall right away.
That's what always got me. Like you're stuck in that box. Your legs and knees are not going to work like that.
Oh, I mean, your all your muscles will be atrophied.
Oh, poor Kaylee.
Stuck his foot in his mouth.
He's really good at that.
The man they call me.
Well, somebody's upset.
Good for her.
And the woman's got the final word.
You know, she thinks that it's Mal.
He must have been really bulky before.
That is a
before you-
that is a lot of wool that's been glued on this man's face.
Saved by the chance.
His eyes kind of gross in
That dude has a knife in his chest.
Yes, he does.
Fighting at all.
He's magic though. Remember, he got out of that box after 4 years like nothing.
Now, John, I noticed that kid is in multiple scenes but never says a word. Is he background talent?
I mean, yeah, I mean, non-speaking role, didn't get paid the same. But I don't know. I mean, he's a kid, so probably he was probably hired as an actor. He was probably hired as an actor, and I mean, kids are really not easy to direct because they're kids. They don't have a lot of experience, so sometimes it's just by creative choice that you just are like, we're not going to have any speaking happening here.
Motherless goats of all motherless goats.
Are these actually like legit Chinese expletives that, like, if this was aired in China or tried to air it in China, they'd be like, no, this is totally lewd. You don't.
Well, a lot of them actually aren't pronounced properly, so there are plenty of them that have no idea what they're saying.
Got it.
Look, there's the ship.
Probably meant to be more like a Chinese slang.
I like how when they're down in the atmosphere, you can hear the ship.
Pretty sure at the distance that he shot him with that shotgun, pretty sure that there would have been some spray that would have gotten on him, right?
You would think so.
I owe a few pellets.
TV show, remember? TV show.
Oh, right.
There may
This-
be a
this
limit
isn't-
to what
this is not a
gore they were allowed
documentary? Oh, it's a documentary. I'm just-
Gotta learn to adapt, go with the flow, you know?
Do you like that song, John?
What did you say?
Do you like the Hero Champion song?
Yeah, that I did like that song. I love that episode.
We figured
that
you
might be my favorite. That might be my favorite episode so far.
I love that episode.
A really fun one.
That was a blast.
Anyone else want to come up on the couch and chat about what we just watched?
After
Feel free
they
to raise
filmed
your
that
hand.
episode, when it was done, Adam Baldwin actually stole the head off of the statue as a souvenir.
What's it made out of? It's probably made out of styrofoam.
It was made so like clay, and in fact, in some of the scenes, you see a crack because they made him return it to reshoot. And then
Oh wow. Something that I thought about is not necessarily like show related, but it is kind of, I guess. That moment where Kaylee says, like, where they come onto the planet and they're talking about, like, you know, that this planet's like a mud planet, or these like mud people or whatever, and then she says, you know, that the Firefly has a lot of porcelain parts, you know,
Ceramic.
and ceramic. There's a lot of ceramic parts, which is true. Like, you know, like ceramic is used a lot in tech stuff, in hardware, and you sort of like forget that, you know, when it comes to like high tech sci-fi, right? It's like almost always like metal and wires and all of that. And I mean, if you think about it, like the like our own like real ships that like leave the atmosphere, you know, that like take off from Earth and leave the atmosphere to go into space. I mean, those things are covered in ceramic. I mean, they've got tiles all over
Because it can
that
take
are made
the
out of
heat.
ceramic.
Yeah.
Right,
It can take the
exactly.
heat.
And you
I'm a
but you
hairdresser, so we use ceramic on flat irons. You iron people's
Yeah.
hair with ceramic.
Exactly, yeah. And you just don't see. I'm glad that they made a mention of it. That she made a mention of it, because I think that's just a nice little detail. But I will say that, like, you rarely ever see that visually represented in science fiction. You know, ships always just look like big chunks of metal that are floating around.
That's true.
And I get that, like, oh, it's sci-fi, you know, we don't know what their technology is. It's probably a metal that's like super cooling and all of that kind of stuff. But it'd be cool to see. I mean, like, if the Firefly was like kind of looked like it was covered in the kind of tiles that the space shuttle was covered in, you know, there'd be something kind of, I think would be kind of interesting about that. It's just something I thought about.
It's a fair thought.
Just, you know, that's just like my brain thinking about science fiction, you know, kind of in like sort of in the same family as my discussion about Planet Reebok, you know, just pushing against the typical tropes of a genre. I think that you know, this show really pushes against the tropes of a genre in a lot of really fun ways, and also plays with really classic tropes of the Western genre, you know, in ways that you never see it in the you know, the space opera genre, which I think is really fun.
Because not everybody down on the planets are all futuristic.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, it's more than just that. I mean, you know, this is truly like a blending of genres. You know, that it's really truly like taking just Western, the like classic Western, taking like the classic like sci-fi space opera, and just smushing them together.
But don't you think it's, you know, it's frontier, so it's going to be very rustic if they're settlers from.
Yeah, but you don't need to have everybody talking like they're from the, you know, it's like, you know, it's
bad
I mean,
accent.
I'm glad that he's doing it, because I appreciate that, because I appreciate it for what it is, a clear blending of genres, you know. But it's like, you know, I mean, you've got saloons, you know, maybe like a sci-fi version,
Well,
you know, sci-fi version of a saloon doors, you know, like, you know, it's really like, you know, like it really is like very classic tropes of Western storytelling that have been just brought in, and I think that that's really fun when you see that done. I actually think like some really great stuff does that. I mean, another you know, a genre that or a movie that totally blends that would be, I mean, I know that we've talked about it as the possibility that the Firefly universe and the Alien universe could be a shared narrative universe, but like Aliens is sort of the same. I mean, like, you know, taking the horror genre and a lot of the tropes of horror and mixing it with like the tropes of space. It was, you know, pretty ahead of its time. Now we take it, you know, we sort of take it for granted because there's lots of movies since then, but you know, that was sort of the first of that kind.
I keep trying to think of the name of the movie where they did that. It was literally sci-fi Western.
Well, you know, I mean,
Blockbuster,
Star Wars.
I can't remember the name of it.
Star Wars. Oh, you're talking about the yeah. You're talking about the
Yes.
one where it was like in the West. Clive Owen plays like, it was like Western with aliens that attacked, and he got
Yes.
yeah.
That was
I think it was
bizarre.
called Cowboys and Aliens.
Oh, Cowboys and Aliens. Yes.
I think it's called Cowboys and Aliens.
Yes, it
Not
is.
really. Yeah. But I mean, you know, Star Wars has been described, and you know, really is in a lot of ways a space Western. I mean, it really truly fits a lot of the space Western style, narrative style, especially now. This new Mandalorian series is totally a Western, you know, but it's all still kind of hidden behind a lot of you know, of the Star Wars style. Whereas here, he's actually just thrown that away completely. Like, you know, characters are really truly look like they could just be right out of the Wild West. You know, whereas if you drop like the Mandalorian into, you know, into like the, you know, 1800s, you know, it would look ridiculous. Whereas you could take Jayne or Mal or whoever and drop them in like a saloon in like the 1800s, and they would mostly, you know, sort of fit in. Certainly their accents would.
Their clothes wouldn't, though.
Some of their clothes
Well,
would.
some of them would. I mean, maybe not there specifically, but we've met a couple
Jayne.
characters that are just like, yeah,
Yeah.
Jayne maybe. Jayne wears a lot of t-shirts. They wouldn't have that. But we have met, you know, a few people that they've kind of come across where it's like when they're down on the planet, where it's like, you know, just really truly like fully Western attire.
Well, the concubine definitely could pass, and the doctor could pass for upscale.
Yeah, I mean, think about like the doctor kind of looks a little bit like the doctor on Deadwood a bit, you know.
Yeah, he dresses in his 3-piece suits.
Yeah, and he's got the glasses, the little glasses, you know. I mean, it's like it's very like classic Western town character.
I never saw Deadwood, so.
It's good.
What can
It's
you see
gritty.
Deadwood on?
Deadwood's a gritty kind of Western.
What's
to me.
Deadwood on? What streaming
Yeah.
platform?
HBO.
It's HBO. It's an HBO show.
Oh, okay. Is it still on now, running?
No, but
Or is
they
it just
No. But I mean, if you have HBO, you can watch anything that's on
Right.
HBO.
yeah.
It's all
They
on
did a
demand now.
movie a couple years ago. They put a movie out, like a follow-up, but it's the series ended a while back.
I want Westworld to come back. That's so good. We should do a watch of that.
Has that ended?
No, there's a new season coming on,
Yeah,
but
that's what I
there's
thought.
2 or 3 seasons already, I think.
There's 3
Yeah.
actually.
I could get into Westwood, a Westworld watch. I started watching that. I watched the first season of that and fell off, but I've heard that it's gotten a lot better.
I thought it was excellent.
I've only seen the
The-
first season as well because they took so long between them. I didn't get.
I really liked Westworld. I saw them all.
So to this episode, I mean, I thought that the stuff with Book was silly. The like the hair thing, I thought was a very, very, very goofy bit.
There's
That's
actually
my
a
favorite
line.
part.
There was a
It was-
line that
it
they
was a little too
didn't
goofy.
actually have, but it's in the script where she says we need a snow shovel. A snow shovel.
A snow
What?
shovel.
For what, his hair?
Well, yeah, she said
Yeah,
there's too
for
much
sure.
snow on the roof. His head is gonna cave in.
She
It's
does say that.
literally
So
his
she needs
brain or
first
something.
thing.
I just like I just want to be a fly on the wall of the conversations around like, so Book, she's gonna come in and his hair is just gonna be like sticking out, because he's pulled it out of his ponytail. Like,
That was some
like
crazy hair.
and talking to the actor about it, like, all right, so this whole plot line here revolves around you taking your hair out of the ponytail, and it's just gonna be sticking up. Like, I would love to be a fly on the wall to see like what the reaction to that was.
All
That
I
hair
know
was
is as
scary,
soon
though.
as he offered to stay behind with River, the first thing that came to me was, oh no, too much snow. Like, it's so iconic in my mind that I'm like, this is the episode with snow.
Yeah, Sherry, she does say that line when she's hiding in that cubby hole and he's looking in at her. Or as we come to that scene, that's what.
But she doesn't say that we need a snow shovel. She does talk about the hair, that it's too big, that it's too much, but she doesn't say we need a snow shovel.
Oh, okay.
As a hairdresser, that was some scary hair.
I'll be
Do
getting out
something
my
to
snow
that.
shovel.
It was too wild. Oh, I'm gonna say goodnight to everybody while there's a pause.
Night, Heather.
Good night.
Night, Heather.
Enjoy.
No, but I gotta ask John, is that really such an odd conversation to have? I feel like hair and makeup are considered like part of the storytelling in a lot of shows. So would
Yeah,
that
but
really be
I
so
mean-
odd that they would plan his hair to
Yeah.
be
Well, I mean, not everybody's hair would stand up like that. And so that seems very specific to that actor. So they would have so it would be like hey, we're thinking that we're going to take your hair out of the ponytail and we want to make a bit about how weird it looks out of the ponytail.
Do you think they saw it and said, we're putting that in the show?
I mean that, like, I'm trying to think of, because like you cast another actor in that role, and that might not have happened. Like that wouldn't have actually worked.
But isn't that where wigs come in? If there's a specific look that you want and the actor can't do it naturally, they would put a wig on them.
But you think that that's like that like that's part of the like that's part of the character, that like, oh, that these preachers have like hair like that?
Well, yeah,
I don't
because
know.
he was just about
it just seems
to say it's part of my, part of our order that we keep our hair long and now whether the hair is standing up, I mean, obviously is
I mean, that's the
hair.
whole point. Keeping the hair long, that's one thing, right? Like that they would keep it long. But then they're like, okay, this man cannot have long hair, like this actor. And so taking his hair out is going to create a huge white thing that we're going to actually write into the script. That seems very personal to the actor, like I feel like that's something that that I feel like that's either something that they like saw and they like talked about it, like it feels like something that the actor might have even been a part of the if they did that, that the actor thought that it would be an interesting bit. It's an interesting thing to make an entire piece of plot around, given that it's so specific to that particular actor.
I think they executed it well because some people laughed. It was funny. So I would say that was successful. It would be weird to read it on paper. Like you're going to come out with your hair big and we're all going to scream and run,
Yeah, that's sort of what I mean. I'm trying to imagine what that looked like in the script. The most interesting part to me about that whole storyline wasn't any of that. It was the stuff with River and Book when she's ripping out pages from the Bible. I thought that was a really interesting scene.
I love how she was finding scientific explanations.
Yeah.
I love that bit.
Yeah, that's that part is like definitely huge, because like that that I can relate to River in that moment, like of just not being able to quite reconcile stories that that are supposed to be totally true but just don't logically make sense, and that it requires a different kind of thinking to be able to think past that, which Book has. And what's so interesting about it is that we've been set up to sort of understand that River is this like extremely intelligent, like almost the point where she's just not even capable of functioning. She's so incredibly intelligent, but doesn't have the ability to think the way that Book thinks. Like her intelligence is actually like hindering her. It also got me thinking a little bit about the last episode, and that the Bible passage, quote unquote passage, that Saffron says, and how we were all like, that's not from the Bible. Like, is it a new translation? Is it not? And I mean, I don't know. I don't think that we got any closer to answering that question here, but it was interesting that we got like a pretty good, firm, definitive answer here that tells us this is Christianity. We haven't actually heard the word Christianity or really anything that has told us so far anything other than just hints here and there, right? Like, oh, the cross, and and shepherd, and whatnot. But it is the first time where, I mean, we know that there's a Bible, right? But we don't really know like what's in it, because obviously you could use the word Bible as a synonym for any holy book, And now we know that the book has the stories of Christianity in it, or Judeo-Christian stories. So it is Christianity, or a new form of it 500 years later.
Yep.
Do we want to talk about Jayne, the hero they call Jayne?
You know the song by heart.
In case anyone didn't see, I think it was Aaron who posted the lyrics on Discord.
Personally, no, I don't know it by heart, but I can sing along when
It's a catchy tune. I actually think it's it's a catchier tune than the opening of the show.
It's funny because when you were talking about the opening of the show song earlier, I almost said, just wait till you hear the next one. And I thought, oh, I can't say that.
I kept my mouth shut, but I was thinking.
I really wanted to say, you'll love the song in this episode, John, but I couldn't say it. So that's why that was the only reason I said, no, just listen, because I really wanted you to hear what they were singing, because I thought it was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's funny. It's cool. And it's also cool to think that, like, I mean, now knowing that Joss wrote the opening song, I have to imagine he wrote this song as well.
Most likely. I think he likes to write music. I was going to say, like, somebody who likes to write music.
I really like that. I really admire that. That writing the lyrics of the music in his shows is important to him.
Well, did you see Dr. Horrible's sing along blog?
Oh, that's right. Of course, he writes musicals. Of course, he writes musicals. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, I think it's him and his brother. His brother, I think he has a relative or somebody who's into music. I can't remember. It's so long ago that I read about it, but I really like that too. But he wrote that as well, and that's a musical. So yeah, if we could find that, we should watch it when we're done with this, because Nathan Fillion's in that.
It's
with Neil Patrick.
Yes, and Felicia Day.
Well,
So-
yeah, Felicia Day. Yeah.
So are you really saying that you said this was probably your favorite episode so far?
So far, it's the most. It was a lot of fun this episode. I enjoyed it. I just enjoyed the mood of the episode, and that was a really interesting. That's an interesting idea for a story. That like this town has come to view this guy as a hero, when in fact he totally accidentally dropped the money for them, right? Like, it's kind of an interesting idea. Like, what if Robin Hood wasn't actually good? What if, like, the tales of Robin Hood, were just this like fabricated thing that people created, but that, like, in reality Robin Hood just like accidentally messed up one day while he was trying to just rob for himself, and ended up giving all the money to everyone. They just created this myth around him. I just think that's such a clever concept for a narrative.
Well, it makes it a lot of fun because, I mean, obviously Jayne never would have done that, so it makes it even funnier. And I love that the statue is kind of angry looking. It's furrowed brown.
Oh yeah.
When he was taping up the gun at the very beginning, I literally had the same words that came out of Simon's mouth, like seconds before Simon said it.
What, that this is what going mad feels like?
No, well, he was like, Jayne, enemies? What?
No.
It was like,
I love the little whimper he gives when he pulls the tape. Like, Jayne has gotten shot and stabbed and never cried out, but pulling the tape off of his body is like, "Ooh."
Well, he probably ripped some of the hair off out of his chest, out of the stomach.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Waxing hurt him more than a gunshot.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, waxing doesn't. I mean, you pull that Band-Aid off quick enough.
Oh,
But why were you all? Why were you all like? You know, when I said questions.
Because we
Wha-
were excited
like-
for what you were gonna get as answers.
Oh, okay,
We-
okay. Because I
Can't
thought that
spoil.
I was like, is it so incredibly obvious? Obvious what's going on here? I mean, why do they have a statue of him? I mean, I got that, like, you know, that like maybe, you know, he's a wanted man and whatnot, but I'm like, you don't make a statue like that. Only, I mean, unless you're mud people, then maybe you do. But even still, it would be kind of a weird thing to do.
Not to over intellectualize it, but I'm super new to the series, but I don't know, just as we're talking about it, it kind of feels like, you know, myths and legends of people who, you know, maybe do a thing that is misconstrued or maybe not the thing that they meant to do at all. Like my first thought was like, well, Columbus ended up in America. He didn't discover it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
and so
right, yeah.
it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, he literally was a selfish dude who did something accidentally and now he's heralded. And isn't that exactly what history is throughout the ages, is that we, you know,
Sometimes, yes, it is.
yeah, I mean, like, and you erect statues to people that you think did a good thing, and like that's just kind of how it goes. Like, I mean, you can trace that back to the beginning of time. So I was just thinking, like, that's a really interesting conversation that I think the show is having about, like, who is a hero and who, you know what I mean? Like, who is doing good and helping people or what have you. But I think it's really interesting to play around with that idea of like legend and truth.
Yeah.
And I think that also ties into the Bible stuff.
Well,
like
not just that,
100%.
Diana, but they heard the truth right in front of them from Jayne and Stitch, and yet they still want to honor Jayne, even though they
But
heard the truth.
Isn't that exactly what we do to the
Yes.
heroes that we've decided? Like, I mean, if we decide that someone's a hero and we can't be told differently, like that's kind of how it goes, and that's how civilizations function, you know.
And people, it's, I mean, at least seem to need to have heroes. And I'm thinking about, you know, this thing that you read earlier, Sherry, where he's describing, you know, what the show is about, you know, essentially like, you know, about people who have been beaten down, you know, and lost. And like that idea of sort of this town of people, sort of, they just sort of need that. They need to have that sense of hope around somebody, a symbol for their, you know, need to or desire to get to not be so beaten down, trodden on.
I think heroes provide hope. And when you are in the kind of situation that these mothers are in, any hope is appreciated. So yeah, if you don't have a hero, you make up a hero.
Yeah, and it's clever that you know that they use Jayne for that. You know, I just think that's really cool. I liked it a lot.
I think it's clever, but it's also incredibly funny. So like, I didn't think of it at first. You know what I mean? Like I didn't read into it that much because I was just kind of entertained by it. I thought it was funny, but you know, on second thought, it's like, oh, what were they trying to say? Like, you know, what was Josh trying to say with that? And I think it goes a lot deeper. But it was really funny too. So that.
Yeah, and I also really loved how, like, I mean, it was a really powerful episode too. I mean, it was the thing I enjoyed about it the most was that it was a very humorous episode. I mean, it was a lot of fun, very dynamic. But there was also something really nice about the way that Jayne was sort of questioning himself his own motives, right? He knows exactly what he did with that money. You know, he knows that he is not deserving of this hero status, but he can't help but love the hero status. You know, he can't help but wonder if he potentially could be deserving of that hero status, you know. And then, you know, by the end, when he realizes that like he actually got this kid killed, you know, then he's like, you know, the opposite end, you know, realizing that like he's that he is no hero and that, you know, he never will be, you know, which is really like, I mean, I don't believe that that's going to be the case, but like that's where the character is right now, you know, sort of at this sense of realization that he's really not a hero. He is a greedy pirate cowboy that doesn't really care about anybody but himself. It's a good place to roughly start a character that, you know, you imagine to become a hero, become more than that, you know. I mean, again, like I don't want to get too deep into like how many seasons this would have had, but like, you know, we're only what, 5 episodes in? What episode was this?
7. So we're
Oh, sorry,
halfway through the quote unquote first season.
So we're halfway through the first season, you know. That's still relatively the beginning of everybody's story. If you are looking at it from like a 7-season perspective, you know, we're just starting to move out of Act 1 per se, like which wouldn't really happen until like, you know, close to the end of a first season of television if you're imagining a 7-season arc, you know. And so we're still learning who these people are right now so that we can sort of get a good sense for where we hope they will end up. And this is I think the episode for Jayne where we come to understand like what is his arc supposed to be, you know, what's his longer arc supposed to be. And I think that's part of it, you know, is that this man who doesn't not believe that he is worthy of hero status because he just recognizes himself to be selfish and cutthroat and whatever, is on the journey to becoming somebody who deserves the name hero.
I thought it was a great episode. I laughed the whole. Can we talk a little bit more about what we've learned about Inara and companions?
Yes. Well, one thing that I had thought about today, which I hadn't really thought about before, but maybe had been mentioned, is how the companion, who I really had been viewing very strictly as a prostitute or call girl type, you know, escort, has very strict rule, like her own personal rules for who she would even do business with. And I know that they've probably talked about that before, but hearing her talk about it in the context of like, I would never, ever, ever accept your father into my room.
Yeah, that was
You know?
when I first watched this episode back when, and she first encounters him, I'm like, that does not seem like a man that she would approve to be one of her companions. So once they brought in the son, I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. Because he definitely does not meet her normal qualifications as someone that she would spend her time with.
Yeah. Just something that I thought about this time. Like I said, I'm sure, you know, it sounds to me like you're saying that they have talked about that in earlier episodes, but it was the first time I think that I really heard it and understood that, like, well, then that kind of, you know, that seems a little bit different than just the classic prostitute character that we've seen in fiction.
It's a business.
It's a
Well, it's
business,
more-
but it's also she's got ownership. Like
I was gonna say, yeah, exactly. It's like a business. She got ownership. She's got ownership. She's protecting her She's protecting her business. She's protecting her brand. She, you know, like, you know, yeah. I mean, it's cool. What other things would you say that we learned today from? I mean, she's a very wise, you know, she's got very wise words for the people that she does business with. I mean, she's certainly like, people are certainly getting their money's worth, you know, and I'm not talking about from the sex. I mean, she seems like she's a really good therapist, a really good, like,
that's what
Well,
I
she
was
was
gonna say,
trained.
that it's
She
not
was trained
just
at an
the physical.
academy.
yeah, yeah,
There's also therapy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's what we
Which
learned in
is-
the last episode, is that there's training from an academy to do
Right.
what they do, because Malcolm's wife
Yeah.
had been trained.
Saffron. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. I mean, I guess we have seen that before in some other contexts, but this episode really seemed to highlight it the most. It was the first time that I really thought about how, like, well, if who she will bring into her room, then, like, you know, how it's not a whole lot different from somebody who's just discriminating against, you know, the people they want to get into any relationship with. She just has this added thing where you have to pay her, and she gives you, you know, and she's not exclusive to you, and she gives you more than just the physical. She's also giving you, like, the spiritual and the intellectual and the, you know, psychological,
And that he comes back. So, like, he leaves her room at some point to find out the news about what's happening with his father, and he comes back to talk to her. And that's, you know, that's part of, I guess, the service too. Like, it's not a once the door is closed kind of thing.
right.
So how many drunk actor collections did you do?
This was the silly. This is the sillier part of my collection. I wouldn't call any of those drunk performances like prized parts of my collection. I mean, there's certainly not like an Ed Herman drunk performance. That's for sure.
No.
No.
But things were
No.
going so well.
Yeah.
Things are going so well.
When we made love last night.
Yeah.
I did think it was kind of funny how they fell asleep on that tiny little bench. She took advantage of drunk Simon just to sleep on top.
I'm here's something though that I will say about Kaylee. I will say that I'm just now starting to get that the writing wants me to see her as kind of rough around the edges, and I'm not seeing that. But now hearing the script asking me to please see her as rough around the edges, and that I'm not really seeing.
I mean, I think it's clear that she hasn't had any sort of formal education. She's a great mechanic, but I don't know that she knows much about, like, today we were just having a discussion on Clubhouse that, like, Simon is the only one who's probably had any actual formal education on the entire ship, other than book, maybe. Right? So that's why he's able to tell them about, you know, the beer that the Egyptians fed their slaves. So I don't know if she needs to necessarily be rough around the edges, but I feel like that should be a given that she's probably not had any formal education.
Got it.
Plus, she's adorable. Like, if you don't think she's adorable, we've got problems.
Well, she is adorable.
She's adorable.
I think she's adorable, but her adorability sort of it sort of dampens that rough around the edges thing, you know. When I think of rough around the edges, I think of that character in Deadwood, you know, that cowgirl in Deadwood.
Are you
know what I'm
talking
talking
about? You're talking about the blonde girl who's the the companion to the saloon owner?
Yeah. No, not the. She's not. She's like a cowgirl. She's like.
Sorry, I'm trying to think back to which one you're talking about. There's a few different women in the show, so I was just trying to think of which one you were talking.
I'm trying to see here.
Are you talking about the one who has the kid? Where she's like kind of on her own, but she I think I know who you're talking about. She was kind of rough around the edges.
She's a cowgirl. You know, she's not
she's based on a real. You're talking about the one who's based on a real person.
Yes, she is
Yeah.
based on a real person. That's correct.
I can't think of her name right now, but she's actually a real historical person. Yeah,
Yep,
okay, I know who
she
you're talking
sure is. She sure is. She's
That's gonna drive me nuts.
I'm trying to find her now.
I've never seen Deadwood, but I'll just.
Oh
go
yeah,
out and say-
that's right. She plays Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane.
That's right.
Calamity Jane is the character.
She's more than rough around the edges, though. She is just like, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's sort of rough around the edges cowgirl that I'm imagining, you know?
Yeah, I don't think Kaylee's supposed to be like her so much. I think Kaylee's supposed to appear like she's kind of this young, innocent sort of person, but she really isn't as innocent as she appears. She's sweet, but yeah. I think what you're thinking of is trying to be rough around the edges is just her lack of innocence in some.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, that line that she has where she's like kind of throwing back at him for being like, you know, like that's the sophisticated thing to do, you know, that I mean it just works a little bit better if the character really feels way more rough around the edges. Whereas I like I said, I think that Kaylee, yeah. I think that Kaylee mostly comes across to me as just adorable, like just really sweet, you know?
Yeah, but you don't mess with a sweet woman and piss her off. Like even sweet women can turn around and bite. Like if you piss them off, and she got pissed off.
I know. Yeah. I get that.
And I want to point out, Kaylee was shot. So I mean, she's lived something.
Yeah, that's true.
I just want to say, John, that I got a message from Hunter when we were talking about Calamity Jane, and she said that's not rough around the edges, that's just rough.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but I mean, I actually would like really appreciate that, like this, like really rough character with this like man of high society, and the two of them are like kind of courting each other. That's, to me, I think that's really interesting, and I feel like that's what they kind of want out of this a bit from some of the dialogue, but
Oh,
it's not quite there
It's,
for me.
it's what Kaylee wants to court Simon, but Simon's just kind of being.
No, I mean what
oblivious
the
or dumb.
narrative, I know, but what I'm saying, what the narrative is sort of suggesting, is that these two people are from like, total different worlds completely, and I get that more intellectually because I understand that that's what they want to do with her. But like, if you really want to show that, like, then you get a Calamity Jane and a character like that kind of courting.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because it's like mostly just like two attractive actors. like that's what I'm kind of seeing, is like two attractive actors that are going to be love interests of one another,
I think more what they're going for is the super kind of genius level, because he is a genius as well, not as much as River, but and the uneducated girl, like he in his normal world he would never probably date her, kind of thing. I think that's kind of the way it's going, more than the rough versus the put together guy.
But I think that Hunter hit the nail on the head. I think I want her a little closer to rough. a little bit closer to rough.
Well, that's definitely Calamity Jane. And
What did you all
And probably
think about
real
his
life.
little? Sorry, Chris.
I was saying in probably real life, but what were you?
I was gonna say, what did you all think about Simon's little explanation at the end about how being proper and polite is more important now that he's on the edge of nowhere, and that like that's his way of showing her that he likes her, showing respect? Was that a cop out or was it real?
Yes.
Oh, I
I
think
think
it
it's
was
a
real
cop-out.
for him.
I think that's just his way of being a weenie about it and getting out of dealing with
Being a
anything.
weenie about it.
Sorry, guys.
My apologies.
What's your feelings on it?
I'm with Chris. I wanted her to call him on it and be like, come on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did we lose? We lost Sarah. Okay, I was gonna ask for another male perspective. Is there any husbands hanging around who could, since John is so quiet? Because my husband's the same way.
I'm trying to think how I feel about it. I mean, I think that
Simon thinks he's being sincere, but I think he just doesn't. I think he's immature in his own way, even for a 25, 28-year-old, however old he's supposed to be, guy when it comes to women, because I think he's just being like, well, I already said it, I won't. I think he just doesn't know what else to say. He thinks he's saying the right thing, but he's definitely not. He's not saying what she wants.
yeah, but he's from a different world.
Right. And I bet
You know, I
didn't
mean,
date much.
Well, I mean, his world dating is different in his world. I mean, she hasn't dated much, has she?
Well, she obviously, maybe she doesn't date, but she definitely hooks up with people. That's implied so far in the series. She's made little comments here and there. With him, though, I think
didn't see
for
that.
him, it was all about education and then his job and then looking for his sister. I don't think he's had a whole lot of experience with women. That's just what I think. I could be wrong.
I was gonna say, I feel like it's his way of hiding and like out of fear, out of like being the type of person that he is. He probably overthinks every action and worries about the the consequence of every action, and his fear is holding him back, but he thinks it's because he's polite. So I don't.
He's
So
probably
do you
afraid to
feel
get
like he,
attached to anyone. And
so do you feel like, do you feel like he needs to not be polite?
I feel like he needs to be a little bit more proactive and actually do something. If he likes her,
or straightforward if he's not
be
interested in her
straightforward
that way.
and you know, whatever act he'd like to perform, he can perform. Like, go out and do something instead of teasing. Like she says, you know, he says he likes her, and then he's like, oh no, not like her, and moves away. And it's like, what do you want, buddy?
Right. A lot of mixed signals there, because when Mal catches him waking up there, he's like, he would never do that with Kaylee. And then he's like, now I like you. And then he's, it's just, say what you think, man. Just get it out.
That being said, I will give him the benefit of the doubt that, you know, he is a fugitive who's trying to hide something with his sister who has clearly her own needs. So maybe he just doesn't want to complicate life right now. But don't blame it on being polite.
Yeah, that's why I was saying maybe he just doesn't want to get attached to anybody because he never knows how long he's going to be in a particular place. Is what I was trying to say a little bit ago, but I didn't quite finish my sentence.
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, he doesn't really totally know how long he's going to be there.
But he could just be upfront with her. I mean, he kind of leads her on and then he kind of pushes her away, and she is very clear what she wants.
Carpe diem, all the more reason.
You really want these two getting together.
I don't even think she's asking him for a full-on relationship. I think she just wants to hook up with him. But maybe she wants a relationship. I don't.
I mean, it definitely has the vibes of like college kids, like talking about wanting to hook up, but not actually hooking up. Did we lose Sherry? Bye, Sherry.
We did.
I think she'll be back. What else stood out for anybody in this episode?
But it does sort of have that vibe, though. Now that you say it, you know,
it totally does. Yeah,
two people kind of like each other, but like kind of have to talk about it. You know, yeah. I get that.
What else? Yeah, I don't know what else stood out, Mary. What have we not talked about?
Have we talked about how it was the companion who saved the day?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that. I was
going
to
that's true. Yeah.
Started talking about something else, that she's the one who got that guy to take the landlock.
Yeah, that's right. That is right.
And how Wash was like in denial of what's happening. He's like, is there a problem? Is there a problem? Is there no, there's no problem. It's like, okay.
Didn't you find it kind of interesting that he was a fan of Jayne because Jayne like defied his father?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was like the only person who's ever stood up to my dad. I remember where I worked with him with Greg Itzson is his name. I remember now.
Do share.
It was right when I moved to Los Angeles, and I was doing a stage reading of a play.
at one of the theaters, one of the big theaters here in Los Angeles, that ended up they ended up actually producing the play, and I ended up playing the same role that I did the reading that I did in the reading. I ended up playing the same role in the actual production of it, but for the reading, he was the like one of the actors in the play. Man, I'm tired. Yeah, and he's really cool. I remember we had conversations, and I remember that his one thing that he told me that I'll never forget, what we were talking about Shakespeare, and how like being a really trained Shakespearean actor goes like, part and parcel with like being a sci-fi actor. Like being an actor that like like your bread and butter. Yeah, your bread and butter becomes like Star Trek episodes and like all this stuff. Like you just play tons and tons of these roles because that like ability to do this sort of Shakespearean type,
the lyrical delivery,
the sort of standard American accent that comes with it. Just those types of Shakespearean actors are like all over science fiction. And makes sense, because it's science fiction, you kind of want to create the sense of like an other world. And so, you don't want it to have, you want it to have a little bit of a proper sound to it. Otherwise it will just sound too modern. That's not, of course, the case for sci-fi now, but that's been historically like, throughout the 20th century, most sci-fi, like, the characters were really like kind of had this like proper gravitas to their performances that you would find in a Shakespearean actor.
That explains Patrick Stewart as Picard, and and Helen. It's all his.
I mean, just think about it. Like all those actors on Star Trek: The Next Generation, like they all have like a bit of a Shakespearean tone to their voice. Give them some Shakespeare, and they will probably nail it.
They nailed it on Star Trek. They nailed it on Star Trek. They did a Shakespeare thing. Probably like probably that was probably inspired by the fact that like most of those actors had done Shakespeare. It's just a sort of a thing, and I remember talking to him about it. So, John, when you do these readings, is it like a one-night thing, or is it a repeated experience?
Well, I haven't done it in years, but I used to do quite a lot of them, and they're usually a one-night experience. They're usually a one-night experience, or they're part of a festival of new plays. And they are usually, unless the director of the stage reading wants to try and put their stamp on it, they're usually pretty much just you're standing at a music stand with your script, and there might be minimal staging that happens, like maybe a little bit of pantomiming, if people are entering or exiting or or something, but for the most part it's just reading. Every once in a while you get a director that wants to do something a little more creative, that ventures more into, okay, we're doing a play now. But usually it's that. And then, a lot of the theaters that do those stage readings, they end up producing at least one from the series that they've been doing, or the festival that they were a part of. And typically some of the actors, not all of them, but some of the actors usually, end up getting a role in the production. That's the way it was for me on a few roles.
some
Um,
good stuff that I did.
I do have a question for you before you, because you probably are going to go soon, and I just want to have a quick
Yeah.
question. So we're halfway through. Do you have any, like, I know that you said this was your favorite, but do you have anything like you'd like to kind of share or recap, kind of like how you and Mary do your fireside chats, like a super quick one on the first 7 episodes on what you like best and which ones you like?
Well, yeah, I think this is probably my favorite episode, probably followed by the pilot. Or the 2-part 2-hour pilot.
Yeah, that's pilot.
Specifically the second half of the pilot. That was my favorite part. But I like both parts pretty much. I really loved last week's episode a lot, but I'd say that like the one that I liked the least, I think, was episode 5. What was episode 5 again?
Safe.
Safe.
The one where they get kidnapped and Book gets shot, so they leave them behind to get Book medical attention, and then they come back and they're gonna burn them at the stake, and they're big damn heroes.
Yeah.
The best part of that episode is the big damn heroes.
Yeah, the big damn heroes is a big line. I know. Yeah, I wasn't super connected to that episode.
You're not the only one who feels that way about that episode, though. When you look at all these combined, so you don't have to feel bad about it.
Yeah, I felt the least connected to that episode. But all of the rest I've really enjoyed, and this one I really loved this one a lot. Mostly, I'd say the thing that I love the most about it, I just really love the world. I love the whole landscape of storytelling.
You have a favorite character?
I think that Wash is probably still my favorite character, but Wash and Mal. I guess it's hard not to have Mal as your favorite character. He's just so incredibly likable, and he's so interesting, so complicated. And I just think that I think he's, for me, he's the most interesting. And Inara is pretty high up there as well.
I'm surprised Book has fallen.
No. Book is a bit one note.
Have you gotten tired of waiting to see what his mystery is?
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's how much I haven't really been paying attention to Book. I forgot. Yeah, that's right. He has a mystery. I'd say like least favorite character is probably River. Because I just sort of feel like I need something more, otherwise, like first of all, we're not spending enough time with her to really get a sense for why any of that behavior is something that we should care about, be interested in. We just jump to her every once in a while, and there's just like a kind of River's being weird, I'm convinced that the further we get into this, without a backflip, without some sort of like a cartwheel kick to the face, the more it's going to actually be, like a legit, like it's going to be presented in this big, like, oh my goodness, River can fight. That's hilarious. That's my guess, is that that's sort of what's being built here, because we're just, other than that, getting so little like from her. Like I just don't really understand what I'm supposed to care about. And then I really think that Kaylee is charming, but I'm just not, like, that's also a character that I'm just not getting deep enough with the character to really find her
super fascinating. Same with Simon. Whereas like Wash, I'm like, you know, just he's so compelling to watch, to listen to. Like Mal, Jayne has definitely like raised very quickly for me in the last few episodes to a pretty high ranking. I think I really liked Book early on because there was like some complex stuff that they were doing with the character that I feel has sort of flatlined a little bit for him. We haven't gotten much deeper since those first few episodes of this guy like out of his element, you know, in like, you know, with a band of thieves, you know, man of God, you know, all that stuff was really fascinating, and how he participated and contributed and all that. And it just feels like it's flatlined a little bit. But I mean, Mal is just like, you know, I think that's the reason. I think it's the main reason why the show has lived so long in the hearts of its fans. You know, aside from, I think the world is really, really rich and exciting, and it begs for new stories to be told there and whatnot. But that character is just really, really, really like he feels like a family member, you know, like he feels like your friend.
Yeah, who doesn't love Mal?
I don't know who doesn't love Mal. Mary, do you not like Mal?
Oh, please, no. I adore Mal. I adore Mal. I was gonna say, if they don't like Mal, they don't like Firefly. Like it's hard to imagine someone who would love Firefly but hate Mal.
Yeah,
this doesn't make sense because he's. So I talked about this a little bit with Gilmore Girls. I'm a big fan of created families. That family's not always your blood relations.
Yeah, a found family. Yeah,
a found family. Yeah, and he's the center of that family. Like he's pulled together this family. So if you don't like him, how can you like what he's pulled together?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wait, did I miss? Wait, did you say anything about Zoe?
No, everybody always skips over Zoe.
I think there's a reason. I don't think they give Zoe enough screen time.
That's fair.
I don't think they give her enough screen time. Screen time. I said screen time.
She's also
I don't think that
the reasonable one who just follows the order, stays in charge. She's so far, she hasn't really had her own like storyline of something on her own to like get the attention.
That's why, like last time, you know, Maui was here once before, and he was like, I think that Zoe is like one of the most important female Black characters in science fiction, and next to Uhura. And I'm just not seeing it yet. I like her. Don't get me wrong. I just don't feel like I've gotten to know her well enough. And yet I feel like I know Wash. That's the interesting part. But she really is a straight man, you know. She is the straight man counterpart to Mal, you know. And usually in a duo, the straight man is a little more forgettable. And lately, I feel like the duo has been shifted over to Jayne. You know, like lately, like we've kind of seen Mal and Jayne kind of doing a lot of like kind of combo stuff together. And so I think she just also hasn't really had enough screen time.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something. I like her character, but I completely understand where you're coming from there. At this point, she really is kind of just kind of there. She's a true supporting character in this show for sure. Not always noticeable, but definitely. Thanks for sharing all that. I was just kind of curious since we're halfway through. because I want to see what changes at the end, if any.
I think the difference between Wash and Zoe is that when Wash has had lines, his lines have had a punch. They've been comedic or
Steals
their
the scene.
response. Yeah, he steals the scene. Like I said, Zoe is just go with the flow right now. So I think that may be why
Yeah.
you feel like, Wash.
But also, I think that it's a legit critique to say that she's just not getting as much screen time. Think about last episode, right? Like, Wash got that big scene with Saffron. I don't remember any moment with Saffron and Zoe. I'm actually thinking back. I'm thinking, where was Zoe during that episode?
She was around, but she was around as the side character.
I was gonna say
So
she was around. She was around, I guess, somewhere.
She called the crew to come and find out about Saffron. She wanted to keep him from going after her. She was around, but just as the wise one, the voice of what is it? Voice of reason.
Got it. Well, I mean, I'm loving it. The show lights my imagination. And today I'm really, I'm sure you can hear, I'm really dragging. The sleepless nights have finally caught up to me.
I was gonna say, did somebody stay up 3 nights in a row pushing a button?
Yeah. But even still, I was really pulled into the episode and loved it. So I know that it's gonna stay as a favorite episode of mine from the series for sure.
Well, it's many of our favorite episodes, one of our favorite episodes too, of those of us who've been watching this before. Diana, what did you think? Are you still awake down there? Nikki? Julie? Anna?
I'm still with you.
I'm here.
Yep, it's one of my faves too.
I mean, I thought it was good. I still don't know how I feel about the series in general, but I did think that there was some really good, I liked the humor and the dialogue. I think that's the thing that I might like about this show. I'm not sure about the space cowboy thing, but I do think I like the dialogue, at least between the characters, when it's funny, when it's sort of I don't know, I just kind of like them talking to each other, but all the other sci-fi stuff, I'm but I like the
character
relationship
development or the character relationships, what drives it for you, but not everything else.
Yeah.
In this show.
Yeah. And I mean, full disclosure, I missed a couple of episodes, but I was listening to you guys. So the development for me isn't there because I just haven't seen it. I haven't actually seen it. But I'm kind of I have so many questions. I'm how do they just take off in a spaceship on a planet? Isn't there, don't we have rockets for that? Because you have to get through an atmosphere. I'm I'm overthinking it because I don't do sci-fi.
You're not overthinking it. Honestly, I do feel we need more of that in science fiction. I really do. I think that that was sort of the point I was making, where it's why are all sci-fi ships always look like chunks of metal?
Yes.
Shouldn't they be coated in the same heat resistant tiles that the space shuttle is? Shouldn't they, I'm constantly asking questions like that, and I feel science fiction, I get that here the genre doesn't really need it, right? The genre is look, if space cowboy isn't your thing, then you are probably, this is probably not going to be your thing, because mostly we're going to lean, when it comes to the world of the show, we're going to lean on all of these very classic tropes of both Western, which is all of that, OK Corral, head them off at the pass, all of that very classic American Western, and all of the tropes of sci-fi, which are, you know, big, cool looking metal ships, sleek, that like, you know, that got the cool jet packs and, you know, and people with laser guns and all of that kind of stuff. Right. But, and then you need, you know, if you are going to love a show like this and you're not ready to like just give yourself over to those very, very, very classic, just cliches of those genres, then you need something else. You need the character development. You need really great dialogue. You need really funny, clever jokes, really interesting narrative plot lines. And I think that the show does that. I think that it sort of has lots of really interesting, clever narrative twists and given circumstances, and it totally you know, the characters are all really sort of charming and you know, they have a sense of realness even in their kind of sci-fi you know archetype, I guess. But I can't help but want to see, you know, the full package, which would be like, okay, can you do sci-fi but also adhere to, you know, to some rules that would make it a little bit more sci than fi? I like my science fiction a little bit more.
Yeah, like I like a little bit of like, I mean, I guess like, yeah, if it's sci-fi, like the sci part of it has to be rooted in some realness. And so, you know, I don't know, like I'm just kind of like, okay, sure.
But like, for example, but like, what about something like Buffy? Could you get into Buffy?
I've told Chris this. I realize why I liked Buffy. I liked Buffy because they were in high school, and I love young adult stuff. And the reason I did
because you can argue that like everything about Buffy that like you might have a critique about regard to Firefly, which is the like complete unrealness of all of the, you know, monster tropes.
Yeah, but you know,
They fall into horror and fantasy more than science fiction, though.
Yeah, I think it's more
no,
fantasy.
it's not about the genre. It's just more about the realness. It's more about like the fact that like,
yeah,
there are plenty of ways to do monster and horror and supernatural. As we know, in the past like decade, we've had plenty of directors do it and writers do it in a really like ultra naturalistic way. And this show is not, but you know, Buffy's like specifically going for, we are playing with the classic, yes, sometimes goofy tropes of the zombie and vampire genres. And you have to love, if you don't love that kind of stuff, then we're relying on you loving the relationships, the given circumstances, the narrative, and all of that. And I think that Firefly's doing sort of the same.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I see what you're saying. I think that for me, for like Buffy, like the entire town was sitting on a hellmouth, right? Like that's just, you know, and that's just completely crazy and unrealistic. So you accept that that's the world that you're in. So like all the other stuff doesn't seem weird, right? Yeah, and it just but then there's so much great stuff about like high school and young adult tropes and like things that happen to you when you're a teenager that like really play into all of those monsters and those things, which I think is really cool. But like this, I'm kind of like
spoiling John, so that's like she's being really careful.
I'm being really careful.
But
at the same time, like, so, but here we have like an actual spaceship, which we have now. And like, you know, so I'm kind of like, okay, so how come, I know they're not on Earth and I know they're not on, but like they're on pretend Earths and terraformed Earths, you know, that I can totally buy that like, they're like, oh, like we created more Earths, like, sure. Okay, cool. So did they create better Earths that, you know, could just like have a spaceship just hover into space? Like, you know, that's where I'm like losing it. I'm just like, and I can get past it because,
but you know, they have rockets, right?
The atmosphere.
Like the ship has two rockets.
Yeah.
No, we have to what we have to believe, what we have to give into is the idea that their technology is so advanced that they have the kind of thrust on these little ships that can pull them out of the atmosphere. And that's just sort of suspending your belief on, like, and just not asking questions like what is their actual tech.
Totally. But I guess that's where I'm getting stuck, is that like I'm spending too much time thinking about that because it's like not super explained. Whereas like Buffy, like Hellmouth, got it. You know what I mean? Like, so you can kind of accept everything else. Where here I'm kind of like, my mind is wandering because I'm like, wait a minute, wouldn't it go this way? And then I start going down that path in my head and I'm missing it. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. Like if it was even more fantastical, where it was like, oh, clearly like that defies any rules of our own natural world, so I don't have to really think too much about this. I can just focus on the characters.
Yeah, like,
but because it like kind of attempts to like explain some things, then you're kind of like, okay, now that you're explaining some things, you need to explain all of it, because I'm not fine.
And like in like Star Wars, I feel that this, and like I'm not a huge Star Wars fan at all, so I also probably haven't had a proper chaperone like with Star Wars, so like I'm looking forward to us doing that one day. But like at the same time, I'm like Star Wars, like I'm sort of confused by being kind of simultaneously in the past, because Westerns are such an old trope, and I'm like, so we're simultaneously in the past and in the future, and I'm like real confused by it. Like just like my senses are like not computing the two things. So
maybe that's where the aerodynamics come in on those pointy Empire ships, for when they gotta leave the atmosphere, it punches them through the atmosphere with least resistance. He was talking about that last week, Diana, about how ships is.
I would also like to, disclaimer, I am not a NASA scientist. I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm just saying.
Oh, well, but I mean, like, no, like, enough to know that like all of this stuff is just make-believe. It's just not, I mean, even things like,
this is make-believe? Oh my gosh.
Even things like, the aliens in Star Wars, it's like, I mean, just even something as simple as, why does every single alien in the entire galaxy, why do they all have the same basic shape? Like, yes, they have different faces. Yes, they have different colors. Yes, they have different amounts of hair on them, but they all basically have 2 legs, 2 arms, a head in basically the same spot. You start asking, and then maybe you get like somebody says, well, technically, evolution around the entire galaxy could actually be like the pinnacle of intelligent evolution. Would actually every alien species would eventually evolve into something that looks like humans. It's like, it's just, you can just explain anything that you want around it. Ultimately, it's all just like, it's just like goofy story, And only recently, I'd say, in like the last, I don't know, maybe 20 years, has science fiction attempted to like try really, I mean, science fiction, I'd say in film, has really like attempted to
over-explain.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that like 2001, A Space Odyssey, I think that was pretty, pretty realistic, but like most of science fiction, most of it throughout the 20th century has been kind of like, take me to your leader,
Right. And you're always going to get people who like I understand why sci-fi, and like I worked at a publisher that like sci-fi was like one of the main things we published, and like I get it. You're always gonna like, now you're gonna have people out there on every message board being like, they got this wrong, like, and that's kind of annoying too. So like I'm not trying not to be that person, but my point really is like, I'm being taken out because I'm thinking about these things. And that just, I don't think that means there's something wrong with the show. I think that just means I'm not a sci-fi person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Sabine,
one
did
of
you
the
have?
things I like about it, Diane, because I like to
Totally.
suspend my reality, my belief.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Like, I just think like different people like different stuff.
Sabine, did you have any perspective on any of?
So I'm sorry, I super joined very late, but I heard you saying that all the aliens look the same. And this was a constant complaint for like Star Trek and Star Wars and all of that. But I always want to say like the alien movies, they really like what Giger did was different. So that was the only thing what was kind of different to all of the other aliens. But I would agree, all the aliens in Star Trek and they all look the same. They all had 2 feet, two arms. It was like kind of like, yeah, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, and the answer to the answer to why really is ultimately because there's an actual human actor in there. You know, like that's the best way to explain it. Yeah, the aliens in Alien were really awesome. I also think that like the alien, like that's what I was saying, like we're starting to see a little bit more interesting stuff, like the aliens in this new movie Arrival that was out like several years ago, that I think Hunter is going to be doing a watch soon.
Yeah, she's doing that.
Yeah, that's actually based on a short story, which if you haven't read it, I really genuinely highly recommend it. It's so good. And I think, Diana, I think you'd really like it a lot. It's not really heavy sci-fi. It's almost completely just about. The name of the short. It's a novella. It's called The Story of Your Life.
Oh.
And it's really about a mother grieving over the loss. Well, I won't spoil it for you, but it's really it's super powerful, and the science fiction is really just more of like an accent to it. I mean, the movie I think kind of went a little bit further with the sci-fi, but in it the aliens are like huge like octopus type things, and inside their ship they're actually in water or in some fluid, some sort of liquid, and it's really an interesting vision of an intelligent species, especially given that octopuses are really smart.
Very smart. Yeah. Arrival is a very good movie. Yeah, it's a very good movie.
Oh, I did like that one.
Have you seen? Have you read the short story? Sabine?
I have not, but I should.
Oh,
so
I'm gonna send.
The movie a lot. Yeah.
I will send you a link. I mean, if you're somebody who has time to sit down with a good book or a good short story or novella, I just really recommend it. I mean, if you've never seen the movie, I would actually just be like, just read the short story. It's just so good. It's so good. I think Diana, that you would really enjoy the short story, and you might enjoy the movie, but you might kind of be like, too sci-fi for me. Whereas I don't think that's how you would feel about it.
Yeah, I think I'd probably rather read about octopi than like see them.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that like in the short story, there's like not really there's not much focus on that kind of stuff. Like it's a in the movie, it's like very clear that like they wanted it to be a big sci-fi movie for the public's love of science fiction, which we are going through a big that. I wonder when whether science fiction will eventually go the way of the Western, because sci-fi and superhero type stuff I mean, I feel like it really has just like replaced the American Western, which was really that, you know, like it represented our heroes. It was like, you know, our big action type stuff. And now it's like all sci-fi.
Well, there are some key differences that I think will allow sci-fi to continue. I will say that at my last job, like, we had published a ton of Westerns and it totally, you know, it was totally passe at a certain point, right? And then they started like very recently going back and seeing if they could like repackage the Western trope for like new audiences. So like that was actually really interesting. And, you know, but I think sci-fi will last a lot longer because it's always going to be new, because
right,
you'll
always like there will always be a sci-fi of whatever today is. You'll always be speculating the future.
Right. And there's also a way to like, there's a way for sci-fi to and fantasy to, what's the word I'm looking for, to sort of mold itself to the culture it's in. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna make up for some old tropes that
not history.
No, it's not. But
I mean,
but what I mean
kind
is
of like set in historical.
Well, but what I mean is Westerns are very patriarchal. They're very like, there's a lot of things about Westerns that don't appeal to a modern culture.
Well, there's a lot of things about Westerns that you just simply cannot change, right? Like, so
right, that's what I mean.
You can't adjust the story of a Western to sort of help sort of like, I mean, I'm sure that there are ways to interpret, but it's way more inflexible, a Western, to like new interpretations that help modern audiences relate and reflect on modern social problems, etc. Whereas with science fiction and with fantasy, because they don't exist, you can create like worlds and situations that are just a mirror version of what we are going through as a society.
Yeah, and also like, I mean, that's totally what I mean. But also like with Westerns, again, like a lot of the elements of a Western, it's like when I think about a Western, I think about Western American expansion. I think about like all this like sort of manifest destiny stuff that like, you know, as we progress in our society, we think about that stuff and we're like, maybe that wasn't so great, you know, and a lot of like sort of the cultural implications of that, whereas science fiction and fantasy will always sort of reflect the ideas of the time that it's in, you know, so like they're going to change. You know, sci-fi fantasy can change with the culture, whereas I think Westerns might be stuck a little bit in the past just because of the elements that have to exist in it. So, you know, that's why I think we're going to have sci-fi fantasy for a lot longer, and it will continue to persist, because I feel like fans of those genres too are also like, you know, like on the precipice of like what's going on in our society and our culture, and like, oh, you know, like kind of deeply engaged in it. So I feel like the creators and the fans of those things are always going to be kind of on the edge of like what our society is up to. Whereas Westerns feel like very like stuck in another time or stuck in another like sort of way of being that our culture is sort of beyond a little bit.
Well, wait a second. I'm going to push back on that.
100%. Let's go.
Just a little bit, because I would also argue that 1950s New York is stuck in a way of historical being that doesn't reflect the world that we're living in, and yet we're all watching a story right now that pushes against that, and it's very fascinating. So I'm trying to imagine. I know that this is kind of a ridiculous thing, but try and imagine an ASP Western.
I think I can. I think she could do it.
I was gonna say I totally could.
I think she could do it, because I actually think that ASP is a very complicated creator, in that she is stuck in a lot of old fashioned tropes, because I think that's just her upbringing and you know, that's like sort of the generation she's in. And I think there's so many instances in every single one of her shows where it's kind of like, oh, wish she hadn't said that, you know, like, and not because it's in the 1950s, but because, like, you know, there are a lot of Gilmore Girls quotes where I'm just like, yeah, no, that wasn't right, you know, like, but it's so her. So I kind of feel like she loves strong women, and she loves like writing against like you know, type in a way, you know what I mean? Like she's writing women who are standouts in their societies, and that's really cool. But I also think like she's sometimes not quite there. She's sometimes still engaging in a lot of old-fashioned ideas about women, and it, you know, I think it comes out a lot, and I see it a lot, and you know, I still appreciate what she's doing. Like, I think she's doing such a cool thing, but at the same time, I'm always kind of, I'm very critical in my own head, at least, about like what she's doing. So I absolutely think she could write a Western.
I've got the one she should do. I think she should do the Charlene Harris, that same lady who did the books for True Blood.
True Blood books.
She needs to do the newer series that she's doing is Gunny Rose. I think the third one just came out, and they're really good. They're Westerns, but they're also like they take place after like World War II. It's like an alternate reality, like what could have happened if the Nazis won or whatever. I think that's
in the High Castle.
Sort of like that. I can't remember exactly what I read the first one a couple years ago, and I haven't finished the second one, and I can't remember exactly how they got to where they're at, but it's still like takes place back then. Like the cars are very the cars are very sparse, and like, but there's also, she always has the like the vampire type stuff that she brings into it, or the shapeshifters and things into her books. So there's that aspect too. But there's the lead character is very strong. She's a gunner, and she goes and she's a hired gun, and she goes out and kills these bad guys, and it's really weird because like the Russians are very prominent in the what used to be California area, and it's a very strange series, but it's good. I love all of her books.
Have any of you guys seen Godless on Netflix? It's a Western. Oh, well, if you like Westerns and you like strong female characters, Godless is your show.
Oh, I'll take a look. I mean, I if a show has me asking questions, I actually, it's kind of the opposite for me, Diana. I actually, if I'm like asking questions, that usually is a good thing for a show. I'm usually like that means that my mind's active, and I'm trying to understand the world better. And the more the weirder the world is, or the more like the more that it doesn't actually match with reality, the more fascinated I'll become.
The more fun it is.
That's just me. That's what makes me such like a really classic fantasy and sci-fi person. You know?
That's what I like about
and also alt history. Like, you know, just you saying that, like, you know, that like the Russians are in California, and so I'm like, oh gosh, this sounds like something I would love to explore. But I'm actually gonna head out. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Can I just tell you one side note? Godless is a limited series, so it's not like multiple seasons.
Oh, cool. How many episodes?
I think it was 8, maybe 10 posted.
That's actually good to know. That's actually good to know. We're almost finished with this series, Why the Last Man, which started out really strong, and then the last part of this of the season got real kind of goofy.
Yeah, and then it got canceled, right? Like,
and now it got canceled. Then it got canceled. Yeah, and it's a shame. It's one of my favorite pieces of fiction. Like, I absolutely, I love it. It was a 40 issue graphic novel,
that is just incredible. It's so good. And it felt like they were doing well at the beginning. It felt like it was sort of a faithful-ish adaptation, and then it just started to kind of just sort of come off the rails a bit.
Looks like it was 7 episodes, so it's a 7-episode limited series. Well, that's
Cool, I'll check it out.
it's a bummer that.
Oh,
you're
we're
pushing-
watching Yellow Jackets. We just watched the pilot of Yellow Jackets.
I am scared to watch that.
Ooh.
What service is
Yeah.
that on?
You might want to hold off. You might
Yeah,
want to hold off.
I don't think I can. I saw the trailer and I was like kind of freaked out, and then I was like, yeah, probably not.
It's pretty crazy. Definitely if you have any fears of flying, you don't want to watch that. Yeah, and then there's just some really like horrifying stuff that is unfolding. But if you can stomach that kind of stuff and you're into it, it's a lot of fun. And then we're watching Dexter because we were big Dexter fans. And we're hoping that they redeem themselves after the just awful final season.
I only saw seasons 1 through 4. I didn't go past season 4. So for me, Dexter's.
Oh my God, you didn't see season 5?
No.
Oh wow. Was season 4 the one with John Lithgow or 5?
I think 4 because I saw.
I think it was 4.
Okay, it was 4. But season 5 is really great too. Season 5 is really great too. It's not as good as season 4, but it's pretty high up there. Season 7 is when it starts, season 6 is when it starts to stumble.
That's what I heard, and I didn't start watching it when it was first on, and people kept telling me, "Oh, you can stop after season 4 or 5." And then I dropped Showtime for a while, and I'd only watched the first 4 seasons. And then when I got Showtime back, I didn't end up watching anymore, and I just never gone back to it. But
I'd watch 5
I really
if I were
liked
you.
it.
I'd watch 5 if I were you. It's really solid. It's really solid. I mean, it's hard to beat season 4 because John Lithgow is just incredible in that season. And season 3 is great too with Jimmy Smits. I mean, those first 5 seasons are just phenomenal television, and then just especially that last season. Oh God.
I've heard things. So
It was a bummer. It was a bummer. But Yellow Jackets. Ooh.
Is that a Showtime show as well?
It's a Showtime show, yeah.
Oh, that's why I haven't
with
seen anything about
with
it.
Juliette Lewis is in it.
Ooh, she's good.
It's good. I don't know. It's good, but it is. I don't think that you probably would want to watch it, Diana.
I'm glad you know me that well. Like, nope.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough at times. All right, I'm out.